Alright, so I've been coding for around 2.5 years now. I learned programming online when I was living at home in Finland with my parents. I managed to land a job as a professional software engineer after only 4 months, and since then I've obviously become a coding influencer online and even started my own tech startup. Yet even after all of that, I still feel like a complete imposter. So in this video, I want to talk about this trend of imposter syndrome, especially in tech. Because while imposter syndrome is real with absolutely anything that we do that is even remotely difficult, I feel it's especially common in tech specifically. And it's a real problem because it literally stops people from achieving their full potential with coding. Many people who probably would be ready to land a job don't even try because they don't think they're ready yet. So in this video, I want to just deep dive into why this is the case. Why is imposter syndrome so prevalent in tech? How can you feel less like an imposter? And most importantly, I want to show you that it's okay to feel like this. You're not the only person who feels like this. And just because you feel like you're not that good, you can still act and achieve great things in tech despite feeling that. Before we move on though, this video has no sponsor, so I just wanted to quickly plug my free newsletter, Internet Mage Club. Now, a lot of the topics that I want to talk about when it comes to coding are a bit too niche for full YouTube videos. So I actually have now a bi-weekly newsletter that I send to you for completely free that gives you exclusive behind the scenes details about my business, what I'm doing, programming tips that are a bit more detailed than you would see on these videos. All you have to do is sign up to it down below in the description. And as a bonus, you also get the free online computer science degree template. Is like this, where basically if you want to study a full computer science degree online for completely free, I have links to all kinds of online courses that essentially give you education equivalent to a full computer science degree. On top of that, you get a list of a bunch of other templates that I have in Notion for completely free, projects tracker template, knowledge bank template, coding courses tracker, a bunch of other free value. And again, all you have to do is sign up to it for free down below in the description. So go sign up and join the other 13,000 members of Internet Mage Club. With that, let's move on to the video. So I feel imposter syndrome is especially big for people like myself who are self-taught, because we don't have the background, we don't have like the connections. Like when I was learning to code, I was the only person in my life that even did anything related to coding. I was completely on my own doing this all myself, and I felt like I just didn't have the background, I didn't have the maths, like computer science background that I felt like everyone else had, and it made me feel like, well, I'm just clearly not good enough. And even after I got my job, I still feel like, well, the company clearly made a mistake, like I'm definitely not going to be good enough. And it made me overcompensate by just learning so much that I felt like, well, I have to catch up with everyone else essentially. And to get into the reasons of why this is the case, if you just think about what in general causes people to feel like they're not good enough, well, of course, one reason could be that you actually aren't good enough. Now, of course, if you go to the gym for the first time, you are gonna feel like a bit of an imposter, and at that point it's entirely natural, because you sort of are an imposter because you obviously aren't very strong yet. You aren't as muscular as all the other people around you. You can't even lift a freaking bar. So that's normal. But where the problem becomes is that if you keep feeling like an imposter, like you keep having body dysmorphia or something like that, even after you're already in great shape. And of course, this can happen anywhere, but I feel like a big reason why this especially happens in coding is that because with tech, the thing is that there's so many things that you can be learning. Like even the best software engineers in the world don't know even 10% of what you could possibly know about the entire world of software engineering. Because if you take even just a simple hello world program, really the code and the output of the code that you see is really the tip of an iceberg. Behind the syntax, we have things like how the programming language works, and then we have the interpreter that runs your code, and then behind that there's the hardware that your entire program runs on, which in itself is comprised of layer upon layer upon layer of complexity. And on one hand, this is one of the coolest parts for me about programming, is that we're using these like massively complex machines where we can just write a couple of lines of code and achieve all these amazing things, because we don't have to worry about all of the complexity. Because by definition, you can't possibly understand all of the complexity about the code that you're writing or the apps that you're coding. It leads us to always sort of second guess ourselves, like, oh, should I understand this, or should I know this about the internals of React or whatever framework you're using, or things like this. And you sort of have to become very comfortable with being uncomfortable and not knowing everything. You have to get, with coding, the core skill is getting very good at doing things despite not knowing everything. With any programming task you're doing, you're probably using, for example, a ton of libraries, like the things that you import at the top of your code file. And it's very, very unlikely that you properly understand the code that these libraries are made of. All you're using are the APIs that these libraries expose. And what makes this even more difficult is that the world of coding and tech is moving forward so quickly. Every year there are new frameworks, new AI tools, new this and that. And it makes us all feel that if we don't understand this new trend about JavaScript and TypeScript and whatever, then we are falling behind and you're not quite sure what you should know or what you shouldn't know and whether you know enough. So I think that's the core reason why imposter syndrome is so incredibly prevalent in tech. And then maybe there's other reasons. Please leave them down below. I kind of want this to be a discussion, like, why do you think this is so common? But now that we sort of have an idea of why this happens, how can we actually overcome this? Well, you know what's really great about tech? Well, of course, there's many things, but one of the best things about tech for me is that everything in the world of coding is figure outable. Anything that you could ever build with coding, no matter where you are in your journey right now, is just behind a couple of concepts or lines of code. And there's no one out there stopping you from building that. All you have to do is figure out how to build whatever you want to build, and you can do it. That's not the same thing with something like, I don't know, robotics, for example. If you want to build like a physical robot, that is going to take a lot of financial resources for you to like get the parts and everything working, and you as a single person without a lot of money cannot possibly just build it on your own. So why am I telling you this? Well, if you think about it, this is one of the most comforting realizations that you can come to when it comes to programming, because whatever it is that you need to build, even if you can't build that right now, you can always figure out how to build it. The point being, in tech, you can always figure things out, and you can always do it even if you feel like an imposter. Even if right now you don't feel like you can get something done, as long as you're willing to not stop trying, you can always eventually figure it out. And that is how we can start to essentially start acting in spite of feeling like imposters. So while that's a good start, I feel like we can go even deeper to like really solve imposter syndrome for good. And this is, out of all of the programmers I know who don't feel like imposters, I think this is what they have actually done. And the truth is that to really not feel like an imposter ever again, what you have to do is actually get good. And I know that this might sound like a terrible answer and it's probably not what you were expecting to hear, but really when you dig down, the reason you feel like an imposter is because you're not actually as good as you feel like you should be. Now, of course, that feeling doesn't have to stop us from trying. And like I told us before with the gym example, in the beginning, you are almost automatically going to feel like an imposter because you actually just aren't very good yet. If you feel like a complete fraud and like you know absolutely nothing about something, there's probably at least some grain of truth to that. Do you think Mr. Beast feels imposter syndrome about making YouTube videos? Do you think Lady Gaga feels imposter syndrome about singing? Now, maybe they still do to some extent, but I guarantee you that imposter syndrome is going to be much smaller than what you might feel if you try to do those things, because you simply aren't actually factually as good as those people at those things. Because the only real action that you can do to actually keep reducing imposter syndrome and feeling like you're better is to actually be much better. And it's the same thing with everything. If you feel unconfident about dating girls, for example, it's probably at least partially because you don't have a lot of experience with it, or you don't feel like you're an attractive enough person. So the only real solution to like reduce imposter syndrome with dating is to actually just become more attractive, go to the gym, become more charismatic, improve your style, things like this. When I walked into my first software engineering job, I felt like an imposter. But then the funny thing is that I realized that my peers actually felt like even more of imposters than me. Like, it's not that we like actually discussed this, but I could sort of sense that I actually had more confidence in my coding skills than they did, because I actually had a lot of colleagues that coded a lot less than I had. So factually, I was probably a much better programmer than them because I had simply coded so much more than them, because I had spent the past year just like obsessing over becoming the best programmer that I possibly can be, which again was sort of because I felt like so much of an imposter. So again, it can be sort of useful to feel like an imposter if it actually directs you to make the correct actions of actually improving at that thing, so you no longer feel like as much of an imposter. And slowly but surely, my imposter syndrome became smaller and smaller as I was actually able to complete the tasks I was given. I was actually being able to do a very good job at my software engineering job. So slowly but surely, I felt less and less of an imposter because I knew that I was pretty good at this thing because I had a ton of actual evidence that I was good at what I was doing. The greatest quote that I've heard about this topic comes from Alex Hormozi, this famous YouTuber entrepreneur. You won't feel better by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by giving yourself a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt. And I just love this quote because it's so freaking true. You can do things to make you feel like you're good enough or feel like you're less of an imposter, but really deep down, the only way to feel confident in your abilities is to actually just work so hard on that thing that you just know that you're good at it. You just have so much undeniable evidence that you know how to code because of all the great projects you build, because of all the lead code problems you've solved or whatever. And this is not meant to be discouraging. This is meant to be encouraging. Anyone with a laptop and an internet connection has the ability to get good at coding if you just keep practicing. Ask yourself, if I built 100 React projects over the next year, would it be reasonable for me to be bad at React programming at the end of it? Of course not. It would be impossible that you don't know how to code after building so many things. As long as obviously you are building more and more complex stuff over time and you're learning new things over time, etc, etc, etc. But you get the point. And remember that just because you don't know how to do something now, if you're just willing to stick to it and figure it out, everything in tech is figure outable. So this brings us to why do I still feel like an imposter despite doing all of this? Well, it's because obviously there's so many things in tech and coding that I simply haven't had the time to build yet. If you gave me the full Netflix code base and told me to unit test it, I would feel like a total imposter. I would feel like I have no idea what I'm doing because obviously I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to unit testing an entire corporate Netflix code base. But as long as I remember, if I actually have to do this, if there was a guy with a hoodie with a gun to my head being you have to figure this out, I have enough confidence in my ability to figure it out that really I can sort of dial down the imposter syndrome and just keep trying. And eventually, as I keep trying, as I keep doing it, I would be able to do it. And then next time when I have to do something similar, I would no longer feel like an imposter about that specific thing because now I have done it before. Now I have an undeniable stack of evidence that I know how to do this thing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you get over imposter syndrome in tech. Kind of. Because you'll never get to the point where you've done absolutely everything in coding. You just have to get comfortable with, number one, being uncomfortable, and number two, trusting your ability to figure it out, and number three, you just need to put in and keep putting in a ton and ton of volume, and over time I promise you it will get better. And if you don't believe in yourself, I believe in you, because if I was able to figure this out, really there's no reason why you cannot do it as well. With that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Keep coding projects, and I will see you in the next one.